We all know what scriptable objects are, and there have been a lot of YouTube videos on the subject, so I won't be covering what they are in this video, though do let me know in the comments if you want one from my perspective. This video is about nesting scriptable objects, and you may ask, why nest them? Well, think of it like a main asset directory with a set of sub-assets, and the concept starts to become clearer and how you might use them. Or maybe on the alternative, you just want a neater project view. Whatever the case, let's get coding. So I've made a head start and I've created an item and an item directory class. Now let's take a look at them. They're basic scriptable objects. You've got the class item directory, derives from scriptable object. I have the ability to create it in the asset menu, and it just has one single field of something amazing. The item class is the same. Item, scriptable object, something, but I don't put the create menu asset in here. Now you could have it where these sub assets could be their own thing. They don't have to be under a main asset, and then you could put the create menu asset there. But in this case, I'm not interested in creating them from the menu to put at a root level in the project. I actually just want to have these under the item directory. Okay, so back in Unity, let's create a class, and we're going to call this class item utilities. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to be just a set of menu items that I can use to show you how this works. We'll jump into that class. We're not interested in it being a mono behavior, and we don't need any collections or any of this stuff. We'll create it as a static class, and we'll start putting in our menu item. So the first menu item I'm going to create, which obviously comes from the Unity editor, is going to be to create the item in the directory. So that's what I meant by not having a create menu asset attribute on the item. So we'll create where it's going to be, the path, and I'm going to put it so it will come up in the project view menu, and that means I'm going to use assets create, and then my subdirectory is going to be called product, and I'm going to put under here the title create item in directory. There we go, and we'll just capitalize that. There we have it. Now this is going to be just a basic method. So we'll go create item, menu item, because menu item, there we go. Now, what we're going to do is we're going to want to know that we've selected an item directory to start off with that we're going to place an item under. So we'll go item directory equals selection.activeObject, because we're looking at what we've selected as item directory. Nice and simple. Now we want to make sure we've actually selected something, otherwise things will start erroring. So we'll make sure we've got the item directory, make sure it doesn't equal null, and if it does, we'll just pump out a log that says need to select item directory. There we go, and we'll return there. Okay, so that's some validation qualified. Now let's look at what we're going to do to create this. Now the item is going to be created on the fly here. Now what we can do is we can actually use the static scriptable object create instance, and we're going to create an instance of item. So what this will do is it will actually create this asset for us, this item ready to go, ready to be added to our new item directory that we've selected. So how do we add this to the item directory? And here's where the special source comes in. We use the asset database class, and this has add object to asset. We take the item that we've created and we add it to the item directory that we're interested in. There we go. Now, what happens is if you use this code as is, it will create an item here, and it will place it on the item directory you've selected. However, you won't see anything, not until an import has happened or a refresh on this particular item directory object. Now we can force this to happen, and how we do that is we go asset database, save asset if dirty, and we select the item directory, the root, if it were, the main asset. Now what this does is it basically looks at this and says, is it dirty? Yes, I'm going to save this asset, and it just saves this particular asset. Now there is save assets on the asset database, which will look for everything and save all those assets. But we're going to keep this insular. We're only interested in this item directory as it is. Now, obviously, if we started using this, all these items would be created, but they wouldn't have any name because, as Unity does, item.name has to equal something to basically put it there. So you just end up with these blank scriptable objects under the item directory. So let's add a name to it. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to use a method from a previous video I've done, which has a text entry dialog. And I'll leave a link in the description on where you can go and see that and get the code for it. But what you can do is you could do an automation thing where you basically set the item to the next available index, or you could have all the items just as the name item. But I'm interested in giving each item a unique name. So let's save this and jump back into Unity. Now, once we're here, we'll come to our data folder under content and we'll create under product an item directory. And that comes from that create menu asset. And once we've created it, we have our item directory. And we'll call this item directory amazing. And we're just going to add a product to this, the create item in directory. And that's the menu item we just created. So when we do this, mine brings up this text name dialog, which, as I say, is in that video, link in the description. And I'm going to call mine item 1. And as you can see, an arrow appears. And now I've got this drop down and you can see this item 1, which has the something, it is a type of item, is now nested under this item directory. And we can do another one. So if I come in and I create another item, we can do item 2. There you are. So now we have items under this particular directory. And if I jump back into Visual Studio, I just wanted to point out that basically this asset database has all sorts of methodology around using these. In fact, you have things like remove object from asset, which if you just select an item will actually remove that item from there. So you could put removing options as a menu under the menu item. Now, I wanted to mention here that the next steps are me showing an advanced trick to iterating through the sub-assets and also showing how to get the main or root asset from a sub-asset in your editor tools. This isn't for runtime. If you want to access sub-assets at runtime, consider leaving a reference to them in the main asset, basically keeping a serialized field to a list of sub-assets. So let me know in the comments if the runtime concept has you screaming at the Unity docs, and I'll make sure to make a video on how to do it. Anyway, on with the tooling. So we have our main asset, but how do we iterate through the sub-assets? Well, here we go. We'll create a new menu item. Now, I'm going to have it come up at the same root as the other menu item. So if you've seen any of my videos, I always create a constant. That way, if the root changes, all of them change. And you haven't got things hanging around everywhere because you forgot to change the menu root on every one of your strings. So here we go. And we'll just copy that and paste it into the right location. Menu root and menu root plus list items. So this method is going to just print out the items in the debug log. I'm not going to go into what to do with them. That's up to you. But here is how you can actually get to them with your tools. So list items, menu item. Okay, so again, we'll want to get the item directory. So we'll just copy and paste this down. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go through all of the items that are here. And here's the special source for this one. So item, item in, and here is where we use our asset database class again. But this one will be load all asset representations at a path. And we'll use the path from our item directory. Now, what does this do? Well, if we hover over it, it returns all the sub-assets at the asset path, which is exactly what we want. And we can simply debug log item.name. There we go. So we'll save, come back into Unity. Now we have our item directory amazing selected, and we'll create product. And then we have list items here, and there you go, item 1 and item 2. Now, before I show the last part, make sure to like the video, obviously, and here is some homework for you. Let me know in the comments what sort of thing you would sub under what sort of main. And if no one has any answer to that, well, the video failed and I'll go sob in the corner. But I promise I will still release a video on one amazing thing I use them for, so make sure you're subscribed. So the last thing we're going to look at is sub-assets and how to get the main asset from them. Okay, so back in Visual Studio. I'm not going to do another menu item here. I'm actually going to use onOpenAsset, which we get from the Unity Editor callbacks. Now, I've just done a video on this, and what it basically does is it overrides the double click on an item in the project view. And I wanted to show this as a bit of an alteration, a bit of a difference from just menu items, as I think it's very powerful. So we're going to do public static bool, because it has to return a bool. And again, I'll link a video in the description on how to use this attribute. So it has int instance ID and int line. Now, the first thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get the object that we've selected. And here we'll just do object equals, and we're going to use the editor utility here. And this will just have the instance ID to object that you can do. And we'll use instance ID there. So now we've got the object. Now we want to make sure the object is actually an item. So object is item, and then if it is, we'll create it. Brilliant. Okay, so the next thing we're going to want is to get the item directory from it. So item directory equals, and again, we're going back to our friend here, the asset database, and we're going to use load main asset at path. And then we'll use the asset database again to basically do the same as we did before. Get asset path, and then we'll provide it the item that we have. Now we're going to return this as an item directory. There we go. And you'll probably want to put a check there as a safety. Is it an item directory? But we know it is here, so we're just going to skip that for the moment. So let's put in a debug log, and we'll make this a little bit different. We'll basically take in here the item.name, and then we'll add on to that belongs to, and I can't spell today, there we go, belongs to, and we'll put into here the item directory dot name, and we'll just close that off, and there we go. Now we want to say that we're actually taking care of this. We don't want Unity to open it in anything else, so we'll return true to say we'll handle it. And if this item is not what we're looking for, then we'll return false, because remember, this happens on whatever object you actually double click on. It's not just for items, so make sure you're only doing this with items. So we'll save and we'll come back into Unity. So now if we double click on our item, we get item 2 belongs to item directory amazing, which is what we've got there. And the same happens for item 1. Brilliant. Now we can get our main asset from our sub assets, and also with the previous menu item, we can get all of our sub assets from our main asset. Now, while you're thinking of something you would use this for to put in the comments, here is another video to have playing in the background that will make you want to add yet another tool to your current project.